as I was planning a parenting class, I realized there's a piece that's just so vitally important that I wanted to offer it for free. And I also realized it's something that I use in my activism. So whether you have a child tantruming, or you're on the streets protesting, or you're speaking with police, or you're speaking with your teenager, this particular skill is a vital skill for you to, for me, to be the person I want to be. The first thing I want to ask is, if you were to pause just a few seconds before speaking, just think about how this would change your relationships. How could things just slightly adjust? We're in a world that's moving fast. We're in a world that keeps trying to polarize us. And so I find this question really important because it keeps me centered and keeps reminding me of the importance of just taking a few seconds. And if you were to pause a few seconds before responding to something that has stimulated you, and I'm naming very specifically blame, shame, and a sense of obligation here. These three things I've noticed rise in me regularly. So I'm going to speak from my own experience of the last umpteen years. That my blame, shame, or sense of obligation show up. And so if instead of reacting out of those spaces, and I just take a few seconds to respond, how does this change our health and our life? And I name health because right before the pandemic happened, I had been getting sicker and sicker, and then finally got a diagnosis of MS, and went into the pandemic already quite physically challenged with walking and breathing. And so a few seconds to regulate my own nervous system not only became a way to build relationships, it became a way to improve my quality of life. So that's where this question comes from direct experience. If I was to pause just a few seconds before responding to something, especially if it's stimulated blame, shame, or obligation in me, how might this change my health and my life? All right, the big question, right? What do we mean by pause? And how do we pause, right? So pressing pause. I'm really grateful for Jesse's illustrations because this is a literal picture of me and my child. So pressing pause, this idea that at any chance, any moment, at any time, we can just pause. It's simple, yet seemingly so monumental at the same time. So I want to talk about these three things I've named before: the blame, shame, and obligation. So what helps us to pause is we get to recognize that we're stimulated, right? We get to recognize that we're about to speak or act from a place of blame, shame, or obligation. And the image that I chose was the ideal image that I carry in my mind about being the perfect parent. I'm playing with that. And so I remember being with Marshall Rosenberg and him saying, if you really want to suffer, if you really want to make your life miserable, tell yourself that there's something like being a perfect parent, that there's a perfect parent. That'll just increase your suffering. And so I attach that to obligation because there's this sense of duty that even in my family and in the society I grew up in, that when I become a parent, that I'm going to do certain things a certain way and look a certain way to the world, or particularly to my own parents, so that I can please them. And so for me, this is a key piece that I have to recognize that I'm about to do something that is automatically out of obligation. And I'm going to get deeper into that in my parenting course around breaking some generational patterns. But I want to name it here because I think we can recognize it even just in this short practice you're going to learn today. So blame. That's saying or doing something that implies the other person or yourself is at fault. You know, this comes out of me. This can be a very fast reaction. It comes out, unfortunately, for me, it comes out as I'm disappointed with something. I'm disappointed with how things are. That's often how it comes. Or if something didn't go the way I planned, I can quickly try to look at, you know, was it my fault? Was it someone else's fault? And that's like my habitual response. Or shame, that I begin to react in a way that actually just like hammers myself. It's my own depression or my own condemnation of myself or of the people around me. And then again, that obligation, you know, that I'm telling myself it's my duty to react this way, um, to do this on purpose, to do this because it's the way my mom did it, or it's the way I'm told society expects me to do it. And I can get caught up in that. And so I think this is an important thing to name. And these things that we're trying to recognize are the things that get in our way, because what are we telling ourselves as to why we can't pause even for a few seconds? I know I tell myself there's not enough time. Oh my gosh, you know, it's my responsibility. Mine goes right into that duty file really quickly of why I can't, why there's just not enough time. I've got to keep going. Supper's got to get on the table. I got to get the kids to school. You know, the kids will kill themselves. They're really going to cause harm if I don't intervene right now, or whatever it is. There's, you know, things we tell ourselves as to why we can't pause even for a few seconds. So I'm just going to take a couple breaths because I want you to consider for yourself. What do you tell yourself as to why you can't pause even for a few seconds? And you can even write a couple of those ideas in the chat. I'd love to have you share in the chat. Just what are those things you tell yourself? I can't pause. There's not enough time. I don't want anyone to think that I don't have control, or I'm not got it together. What is in our way of taking 3 breaths, just 3 extra breaths, to self-connect before speaking and responding? And this question is especially for those of us who've been practicing NVC, right? We've been practicing nonviolent communication, or maybe we've been practicing mindfulness, or maybe we have a practice of love and logic or positive discipline, whatever our practices, right? Or even our practices in nonviolence for the nonviolent direct action we take as activists. Even in all of that, what gets in our way of taking just 3 breaths to self-connect before we speak or respond? And again, you can, if something comes to you, please share it in the chat. I know that when we hear from people around the world and feel that commonality, we begin to realize we're not alone. And it's really important that we don't go to our mind alone, that we take our friends with us when we're looking at these places in our mind. What's in our way? Yeah, that thing about there's too much to do. I've just got to keep going. And then if I stop now, then I'll never get it all done. Yeah, that one. I tell myself that one sometimes. Or or with my husband, my favorite thing to do is just to keep going because I know we're really close to solving the problem. So if we just keep talking, then we'll figure it out. And then I'll push right past that moment. So now I want you to think of a situation. This is a chance to, you can journal or you can just think. Would you think of a situation where you reacted in a way that didn't support the quality of connection or the outcome you're wanting? And I often think of that as when I'm not being the parent or the partner or the person that I want to be. And again, you can use those prompts if you want. Think of maybe you responded with some blame, or maybe shame came up in you, or that sense of duty, that obligation, and you just went on automatic. But just choose one situation. And then as you consider this situation, I want you to notice, just kind of go back over it in your mind and notice the moment that you could have pressed pause on your reaction. What was that moment? And that moment is literally the moment before you responded the way you didn't enjoy. So just notice that moment, right? Please just stay with this moment just a little bit longer. This is where we get to utilize this time we're taking now to expand a moment so we can learn about ourselves. So just stay with that moment a little bit longer. You're going to notice some emotional or physical reactions in the body, and maybe just write down one or two. What do you notice? Is there anxiousness or frustration? For me, it's often a tightening in my shoulders. I notice all of a sudden my breath, I'm holding it. Those are my general noticings of what's happening in the body in that moment when I reflect. And we're not pushing this away. This isn't to discover the emotions we don't want to have. This is actually to really get in there and go, oh yeah, frustration repeats. Oh, tightness here in my chest repeats. Oh, holding of my breath repeats. And it might be different for everybody, but there's probably something like if you took 10 different situations, there'd be a repetitive something that happens in the body. And this is important because these are signals. Yeah. So I want you to just be with this for a moment longer, noticing what's true within yourself of what rose up right before you were stimulated, right as you were stimulated, and you responded in that way that's what you're wanting to shift. Where's that moment of pause that you could have entered, and what's happening in your body? So these are the signals. These are your own personal signals asking us to pause. And I've named them mindfulness bells. I've been taught by many different meditation teachers over the years. And, we often use these bells to return to the breath, to return to center, to signal the beginning and the end of something. And I once had a teacher teach me that the sound of the ring of my phone, this is back before we could control the ringtones, that's my mindfulness bell. Anything that might jolt me in my nervous system can become actually a mindfulness bell. And so these signals in the body, my anger, my frustration, my panic, my anxiousness, my tightness, my fear, my holding of breath, these are all mindfulness bells. And for me, this is important as a way to integrate all of who I am and not think I have to change or push something out or separate something within me, but I integrate it and go, oh, okay. That thought, there's not enough time. Oh, that thought, I'm not good enough. Or, oh, that tightening that's happening. It's a mindfulness bell. And for me, what I wrote down as I was done this practice a few times, for me, my internal mindfulness bell is I have a few that have happened fairly regularly. And for me, they are when I feel a sense of hurried up, or I tell myself this is urgent, I can get a real sense of urgency in my mind, and then it kind of goes to my body. And then now I've been able to utilize that as my mindfulness bell. And also I have a thought that repeats, this should be different than it is. This is my overeducation in lots of things. This is me thinking, something's not happening the way it is. And the thought that repeats for me, that has become one of my mindfulness bells to press pause is, this should be different than it is. And then also what I've come to notice for my mindfulness bells is if the need for belonging, or I notice the need for consideration arise in me. Those are kind of regular. So all of those are kind of now, I've made them my internal mindfulness bells. So you can share in the chat what you're discovering. And right now I'd love to just take, I'd love to hear from maybe 4 to 5 voices in our group. And Wendy, you can help manage that for me. I'd like to just hear a couple voices of what are your mindfulness spells that you're discovering?
I don't have, I can't connect with any mindfulness bells because I find my reactivity is almost instantaneous.
So in that moment, Gregory, what do you notice in your body when the reactivity arises?
Notice that I'm talking and, you know, I'm, I'm not paying attention.
So that to me sounds like a very clear bell. I'm noticing I'm speaking, but I'm not quite fully connected to what I'm speaking. And then that would be the moment of the pause. That's a beautiful bell. I probably got that one too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory.
Yeah, for me, the situation I've been thinking about is it's more internal, that I forgot something quite important, and how I was blaming myself straight away. And I noticed a fear in myself, like tightness in my belly, and I'm just really harsh on myself. I feel shame, guilt, and fear that like the husband would be angry. Yeah, so those were my mindful, but it also happens instantly, like really quickly. Forgot the key example, and then the feeling. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something.
I appreciate that. It does happen very quickly. And that's where we're kind of harnessing the integration power of not letting the hammer get on top of the hammer of like, oh, I've just blamed myself. Oh, and then the shame kicks in, and then the guilt. It's like, oh, the blame. Oh, that's the mindfulness bell. Oh, thank you, blame. We're integrating these pieces of ourselves, yeah, and we're letting that become part of the pause. And as you were talking and naming all of yours, I'm like, oh, you should listen to some Tibetan chants when they get like 18 bells going at the same time, because that's what it sounds like. You have a beautiful Tibetan symphony of bells going off of like, oh, okay, now's my chance to pause. So, and that's, we're going to get into what we do in the pause. But right now, I love that you're naming so many things that are they just show up so quickly, right? Just so quickly. And that's our moment. Yeah, that's our
Yeah,
moment.
because I think I don't know, like I think, oh, how do I stop that? But I can't. I think, yeah, it's that pause, then maybe that let it be kind of more gentle with myself, probably, or that's what I would like it to be, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, that gentleness with self. Yeah,
Mm.
that
Mm.
that space that we tend to we tend to judge our judgments. And then as we get more training, in something, then we judge how we do our compassion. Then we get
Yeah.
judgment of self-compassion. We can
Mm.
we can always upgrade how we should on ourselves. So
Mhm.
this is that moment before we should on ourselves, where we take the pause and then we notice, oh, wow, I just beat myself up a little bit. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
my moment to pause.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, yeah. This came up for me like really strongly yesterday. and I related to what you were saying about consideration. I'm just wondering, like, how true of need consideration might be, considering the fact that it always involves somebody else.
Yeah, so a lot of the how we're going to get into in just a moment, but this piece of naming consideration, you know, I can speak to it from my own personal experience too, like the need for belonging. These are two needs that we can fool ourselves into thinking we always have to have somebody else involved in order to have that need satisfied. But as we use these as our pause button, then we become more intelligent emotionally around what actually satisfies those needs. You know, there's gosh, Caitlin, you're making me think of like 18 different examples at once. So I'm going to try and be as concise as I can, because I think this is a vital one where if we can see the consideration or the need that repeats itself rising in us, this can be our moment to pause. And we're going to get into the how and what we do with that space in just a moment. But I think you'll start discovering more about yourself, about how that need may already be being satisfied, or you're going to be able to get clear about what your specific requests are, for others to help contribute to that need. But right now I'm hearing that it's kind of like how I lived for so long with the need for belonging as a painful place in me, that anytime I got with somebody, and even when I first met Jesse, it's like, you know, you have to love me forever because that's going to heal my belonging. You have to promise you'll never leave me and never die. And that's going to heal this place in me that has pain around this need. When in actuality, if I notice, oh, belonging's coming up, I'm about to blame or feel the shame or, you know, react in a way, you know, and that came up a lot with my kids, you know, consideration and belonging. And it's like, whoa, wait. This is about something internally happening in me. And I get to pause, and then I get to respond differently to what's happening externally. And then I notice the external starts to shift. And then that need became more satisfied. That's as concise as I can get without going way off into a different tangent right now, Caitlin, but I really love the question. Thank you.
OK，就是我现在处于很平静的状态下，我可以看到我的正念铃声是什么。
I mean, when I'm in a very peaceful situation, I can find or I have awareness of my mindfulness ring. However, when I'm triggered or stimulated by the situation, it seems a lot of thoughts flew in my mind. I cannot hear my mindfulness ring, so I cannot pause, right? So this is my confusion about the mindfulness ring. So thank you.
I appreciate
中国の部
this
分は、
question.
Sorry, can I just say to Japanese audience?
Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah. 今の中国のものは、チャットに入れました。Thank you, Catherine.
Yes, this is an important question. Yeah, how do we, the mind is going very fast and we're trying to step in. It's kind of like trying to step in front of a train, right? We're trying to stop this fast moving train of thought, which is trying to run the mouth at the same speed as the thought, right? So the idea is, after lots of practice, we can catch it right as the train's taking off, right? But right now we might be at the stage where we're going to grab that caboose and just kind of try to stop it, or we're going to try to grab it in the middle, right? As it's moving. Because right now we're just noticing, oh, this is that moment. I'm about to say something or do something that's not going to contribute to the outcome that I would like to support. And it's that deep practice that we're about to get into. So I appreciate you naming the challenge, the speed of the mind, and that right now, again, we get to be gentle with ourselves. We might be able to catch ourselves, you know, right as everything's about to change, or we might catch ourselves in the middle of it, or right now we might be just grabbing that caboose and trying to get that train to stop, you know, just for a second. And so this pressing pause is noticing. The first piece is noticing that we have these reactive traits in us. So I'm really appreciative of what you just named. Thank you. 谢谢. So these signals, the mind that's moving really fast, the beginning to speak and not be connected to what I'm saying, the intensity of blame on myself or someone else, or thinking I need to act in a particular way. All of these things become signals in the body for us to pause. These are our mindfulness bells. So for just right now, thinking about your situation, just consider 3. You know, maybe just name it, you know, write down and name it, like, oh, speaking without being connected to my words. I notice my train of thought is going really fast and it's hard to stop. I notice tension in my body. So why don't you just take a moment right now and just see if you can write 1 to 3 internal mindfulness bells that are signaling to you, oh, I'm going to pause. And just write those down. So my guess is we've all found at least one bell. It's, you know, we'll develop more signals for ourselves. Usually about 3 begin to repeat. But once we have one, you know, and it's telling us to pause, what do we do? So specifically, and you can try this right now, is breathe through the nose 3 times. Literally close the mouth, place your tongue on the roof of your mouth, and breathe 3 times. And notice if your mind goes, but Catherine, we don't have time. Notice if your mind's like, it's too, you know, that's even a distraction. Just practice right now. Closing the mouth, tongue on the roof, and breathe through the nose 3 times. And I'm not going to go into all of it right now, but there's just significant research in the last 30 years. John Kabat-Zinn, Daniel Goleman, who was one of my original influences back in the 90s, because he coined the phrase emotional intelligence. And that's when I began writing my philosophy of education, of how we can have kids in the classroom do practices for emotional intelligence. And just breathing through the nose supports an emotional shift. I remember one time at my school, we were doing our end of the year performance. And it was at a place where a train went by, a really loud freight train would go by. And it would go by like, we had to do the performance at a time where there was probably going to be about 4 different trains passing by, and it shakes the building. And one of the kids, Bela Fujimoto, a Japanese American boy who he loved teaching people what we were learning at school. And he said, hey, every time the train goes by, let's tell the audience that that's like their mind. And we're all just going to breathe till the train passes. And so we literally, during the performance, we would just stop wherever the performance was and just stop. And everyone stood on stage and just invited everyone to breathe through the nose. And so it turned out to be a fabulous performance. And the audience felt like they really learned something about mindfulness, and all we did was breathe whenever we heard a train. So it's simple, yet again, it's like dealing with a train. And then I want to name this one. This is a little bit more intentional type of breathing, but research has shown that this is a really powerful way to pause, and it's really taking a physiological sigh. And you might have noticed just breathing through the nose 3 times, your body may have yawned. You may have noticed something relax. You may have noticed something tighten. And that is probably a signal from your nervous system that you just need even more space, right? And so this one, I just want to practice with you. You take a deep inhale through the nose and you follow it quickly with 3 short breaths. It can be 2, it can be 1, depending on what your moment is. And then you do an extended exhale. So it looks and sounds something like this. And I just want you to try that. Just a physiological sigh, like it's an active sigh. And this is a much more intentional bringing our attention to our breath. It allows us to just have that shift be a little bit longer. And again, one of the things we're doing is we're creating more space, right, between stimulus and response. And what we're doing is we're shifting. We're going to talk about this more in my class about breaking generational patterns, but we're actually shifting the consciousness in our world around us that there is time. This is actually something that was taught to us as emergency medical technicians, that we're going to add to the problem if we run into a scene. If anyone has seen my TEDx talk around the moment on Maui where I responded as a medical technician to a young teenager who had been hit by a car, and she's laying in the middle of the road. As I was walking up, I actually slowed my pace down and I was doing this. As I was walking up to the young girl who was bleeding on the road, because I need to arrive to whatever it is that's going on, the emergency that's a real emergency, the emergency that's getting created because my 2 kids are fighting about who gets more of the cookies, whatever it is I'm arriving to, I get to slow down time and space. And so that's what this physiological sigh does. And Stanford University, again, other people love to do research. Please go find it. I just kind of do it through experience. But Stanford University did a whole study on just this much, and literally people doing the practice of doing this type of breathing just 5 minutes in bed before they got out of bed to start their day. And the research showed that every single person experienced more ease and joy in their life, just internally, no matter what their outside circumstances of losing jobs or divorce or having kids or just the world itself, particularly living in California with all the wildfires, whatever's going on, these people still were experiencing more ease and joy from this one practice, because what we're actually doing is shifting things in our nervous system. And then sometimes, you know, to add to breathing, I will physically get up. I will get up and I will turn around. I'll just turn around 3 times to make a actual tangible shift in my consciousness of what needs to happen. And I can guarantee you, if you're in the middle of a fight or you're in the middle of something and you turn around physically 3 times, it's the pause. It expands the space of how we're going to respond. And for me, it brings more energy into the space for me to decide how I want to respond. It also, particularly with my kids, the physical movement creates grounding, not only for them, but for me. And like my little one, sometimes if, you know, she can be full on in it, you know, you'll hear a lot more about my little one in the parenting course, but she was born with what's diagnosed as like an anxiety brain with reactive attachment disorder. And so her brain, you know, sometimes isn't assimilating the world the same or at the same pace as everybody else. So she can panic and things can get, so I'll just pick her up, pull her in, and we'll just turn around 3 times together. Can't physically do that with my husband, but if I can turn around 3 times in the middle of an argument, it's going to shift what's about to happen. And most importantly, it shifts me, because I don't have control of the world around me. That's become very obvious with the politics in my country, with the wildfires, with you know, the rising sea levels, with so much happening in the world, right? And with as much work as I've done in education, and still, you know, in my country, my home country, children are afraid to go to school because of literally people being shot at school. So there's so much I don't have control over, but I want my sphere of influence to produce more peace on the planet, right? I want my sphere of influence, my conversations, to create more of the world I'd like to see. And so I have to back that up to the moment that I pause, so I can have choice in how I respond. And so often with my older one, because I can't physically move them, it'll often turn into, like, if I just need to pause, tickling or getting physical in a fun way. And literally 2 nights ago, we were discussing some things about school, and I was getting really frustrated. And I started like coming in with like, well, you're going to have to do it this way. And I started kind of coming in with, you know, a little bit of that blame energy. And literally, Ozella said to me, she's like, we need more humor. And reminded me, you know, help me find the pause through that joy that we created as our own practice together to stop the conversation that's not going in the direction that we would like. Yeah, so these are some of the ways I've been able to extend that space between stimulus and response. You know, specifically breathing through the nose 3 times. Taking a physiological sigh, getting a little more intentional with it. Or physically turning around in the space 3 times. I've been at the airport and been frustrated with things, and literally I'll take my little one by the hand and we'll walk in a circle 3 times. So there's lots of ways to play with how can we expand the space between what's stimulating us and how we would like to respond. And I just want to name that you'll develop what works best for you. So this isn't about like learning this specific technique. It's about trying it out and then you get to develop what works best for you. I truly believe we were all born with the emotional intelligence to pause, to heal, and to shift how we respond. So, you know, in this moment right now, you can take that situation that you had, replay it in your mind, notice the moment of pause, and just pick one of these skills, or maybe you already have one, and practice it. And then just notice after breathing, you know, what would you have said or done differently in that moment? What are you noticing is a little bit closer to being the person that you long to be? Because as we discover this, I just want to remind us, you know, the old Suzuki Roshi saying of, you're perfect and you could use a little improvement. It's like allowing ourselves to, we were born with everything that we need and we could use a little improvement. And so this is about noticing and then practicing and then seeing those shifts. So I noticed that we're at time, and I wanted to take a couple moments for questions or what you learned. So I'd love to hear from Four Voices, and then I'd love to share about my upcoming course and give everybody who is here and present a special rate for the upcoming course because you attended today, because I feel like this is a good precursor to the upcoming course.
For the breath practice, do I need to practice on a daily basis, or when the situation like trigger situation happen, then I try to use it? So what do you think of it? Thank you.
I know for me, if I want to have something become habit, it's important for me to do it regularly. So the breathing, I'll often practice breathing in the shower. I'll often practice the physiological sigh breathing specifically. And I'll do it while I'm cooking. And it gets me in the habit that my body can know what it is, so that then as I'm noticing what's going on, and the noticing, what you can do is just begin simply to notice by maybe writing it down, carry a little notebook with you, or just write it into your phone notes, you know, like, oh, I noticed today, that thought came up again, you know, and then begin to practice when that you notice that mindfulness bell go off internally, then practice that breath. So it's a yes and.
Well, hi, Catherine. Such a pleasure to attend, and thank you so much for your talk. I'm noticing for myself, I can't actually even notice what is happening to me when there's things happening that are intense. So, and then what comes in is my need of, the duty of course. And so I just get involved in the thing, not being able to stop and pause. And I've tried to use reminders on my phone, but then I was like, oh yeah, that thing again, but I don't have time. So would you have any suggestions for helping people to actually start noticing?
Yeah, I would play with that thought, there's not enough time, and then stop and breathe every time you have that thought. So that might be like 60,000 times tomorrow. You know, and because I think there's an illusion, right? There's an illusion that's been created, and I think it's by colonial society, that we just have to keep going. We have, you know, like it's all gonna fall apart. And the beautiful thing is Pema Chodron wrote that book, Things Fall Apart, and taught us, oh, everything's falling apart all the time anyway. So it's not going to make a, you know, the difference it's going to make when I take a breath is the difference of the quality of life I'd like to live, right? So that's the gift we're given to ourselves. So play with whatever goes on repeat for your mind, and then let that be the one that, like, oh, I'm not a good enough mom. Like, oh my God, I'm not doing it like, my friend's mom, my kid's friend's mom's really got it together. Like any thought that comes up becomes the moment to do the breath.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
我的问题是
So my question is, thank you, Catherine, for your sharing today. It helps me regarding to the conflict happened just now. I have awareness about my needs, that sense of belonging and safety. And also during the process, I found I have a very strong emotion. I want to express my rebellions to the authority. And also another voice occurred to me. You are so emotional. You need to explore more about yourself. And I think both voices are important to me. I need to find a channel to express myself. So this is a description about what happened to me just now. And also, I want to hear your feedback or comments to me. So when a person like me in this kind of situation, anything I can do to support myself. Thank you.
谢谢 Kate. Yeah, that's a great time to breathe when we tell ourselves we're too emotional. And that's one of those generational patterns. My guess is that was something you were told, and now it's become your own internal voice. So many of our internal thoughts were external. And this is part of what helps me pause when conflict is in front of me, particularly with my kids. I know that what I say or do next is going to become their internal voices. It's going to become what they say to themselves. So I don't know that I want to pass on some of the ones that I now have that I'm working so hard to press pause on so that I can respond differently. So I appreciate what you're naming here around those pieces. I'm really grateful that you brought this. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in the parenting course too, so that we can make that shift, because this pause, because the other thing that you brought forward, Kate, that I appreciate is this pause is, this is almost half the work, right? Getting ourselves to be able to notice and understand what's going on internally, to then be able to press pause. Oh, here it is. Oh, here it is again. I'm going to breathe. And this goes back to what we were just sharing before with the person who spoke just before you around from Australia, who was speaking to, we're shifting the illusion that we're not allowed to do this, or there's not enough time to do this. That, it goes back to the very first questions, right? We were asking of like, how would our relationships change if we took this pause? How will our health change when we take this pause? Yeah. Oh, I'm really grateful for that. Thank you. 谢谢。
这我有点好奇的就是，
I'm curious.
当转3个圈的时候，你
After
在做
the
什么？
three turnaround, what do you
只
do?
是说跟自己的去观察自己的呼吸，
Is
还是说会
just
做一些
notice
简
my
单的同
breath
理？
or self-empathy work?
Yeah, thank you.
谢谢。Well, it's part of why I have a 5-week class coming up. What do we do after we pause? And it's also trusting your own intelligence, right? You already have been building skills like self-empathy or responding with empathy, right? So turning around 3 times just gives you a little bit more space so that you can decide how you want to respond. Yeah. And you can access your intelligence, because I think this is the key piece here, right? That, you know, like here, this was a moment at Disney World. And, you know, my child was having a bit of a meltdown, right? And I'm telling myself, you know, my kid shouldn't do this in public. You know, my mom would have never have allowed this. You know, like I would never have thought of acting like that in front of, you know. And so I pick them up and turn around. I pick them up and just bring them into me, right? And then I can respond the way I want to respond, you know? And because I have responded in the ways I didn't want to respond. I've literally said out loud to my kid, like, look, my mom would never let me do this. You know, you need to show me respect. You know, that's come out of my mouth. And how many years of practice do I have of nonviolent communication? And I find words coming out of my mouth that I'm shocked by. And so then I get to notice, oh, it's that duty obligation thing showing up again. Okay, I'm just gonna, you know, and, you know, Ozell and I've even created a thing we do where we call it air tickle, where we try to tickle each other without touching each other. And that's been something very powerful for us to do when we're in a public space, because we can just go like this, and it reminds each other, just take a pause. So that, you know, if we're overwhelmed by what's going on around us, then we can get connected, because we're inviting each other to self-connect. So, you know, utilize your own intelligences, because this pausing that we're doing, right? This is the skill of regulating our nervous system. We're trying to shift an unconscious choice, our reaction, to a conscious choice, to a response, right? So that's what we're doing. We're expanding that space, because we want to be able to recognize the signals in our own body, right? That's that big work we're doing right now, noticing the signals in our body that will encourage us to take that moment to pause. We want to increase our choices. Yeah. And that's really what you just named in your question. Thank you for bringing that. Is, you know, there isn't the one right method or the one right thing to do once we pause. There is just an increase of choice, right? We want to increase our choices and of what we can respond with, instead of our old habitual reactions. So thank you for bringing that. And that wasn't planned. That question was perfect, though, for this moment. Thank you. Yeah.
谢谢。
So I want to just share quickly, and I appreciate everyone who's willing to stay. I know we're a bit over time, but I'm calling this class the Parenting at the Speed of Life, loving yourself, loving your child, and not losing your mind. So I'm going to bring in some practices to maintain that self-connecting, to bring up your own intelligences and wisdoms. I'm going to bring some games to engage your family in building trust. I'm going to share how to make life-serving boundaries, because we might have to discern emotional and physical issues. We might even have to physically intervene. So what does that look like when we make life-serving boundaries? I hope you'll join me. I'm really grateful you took the time out of your day today to do this work and have this practice. And I hope that I'll get to play with you some more.